So supposedly we have a thunderstorm coming with like really strong winds and everything, but it's literally blue sky and white clouds outside right now. So not sure if that's actually going to happen or not, but I figured I should probably film this before then. But as you saw in the clips yesterday, we went to the Musée National de Céramique, so ceramic museum, and Torti is already arrived. But that was it was the first Sunday of the month, so a lot of the museums are free that day, and I had been wanting to go there, but they've been closed for construction for a few months. So we finally got to go check that out, and it was just a nice little museum. They had some really bizarre things. And then for lunch, there was a street food festival happening at Hotel de Ville, so we just stopped there and had some Thai cuisine. We had something called guabao, I think it was. It was really delicious, but since it was the last day of the festival, almost everyone was like out of food or was really low on food, so it wasn't like as much of it as we had hoped. But anyway, I did read my chapter today, and Marius is like a grade A weirdo, and not like in a good way. He's not like a cute nerd or anything like that. He is more of a creep. And I'm gonna read a few paragraphs here, so it's a good chunk, but I mean, I think I kind of need to show just how fucking bizarre Marius is and why I would not want to be with someone like him. Okay, so this is right in the beginning of this chapter. And so this is on page 860, and it says, if I can not lose my spot, Marius possessed Cosette only in spirit, but his whole soul bound her jealously to him, and with overwhelming assurance. He possessed her smiles, the light of her blue eyes, and the fragrance of her breath, the softness of her skin when he touched her hand, the magical grace of her neck, her every thought. They had vowed never to sleep without each dreaming of the other, and so he possessed all Cosette's dreams. His gaze dwelt endlessly on the small hairs on the nape of her neck, which sometimes he stirred with his breathing, and he told himself that there was not one of them that did not belong to him. He studied and adored the things she wore, ribbons, gloves, cuffs, slippers, seeing them as hallowed objects of which he was the proprietor. He thought of himself as the owner of the tortoiseshell comb in her hair, and went so far, such are the first stowings, I can't read right now. Such are the first stirrings of a growing sensuality, as to consider that there was not a tape in her garments, a stitch in her stockings, a fold in her corset that did not belong to him. Seated beside Cosette, he felt himself to be lord of his domain, master of his estate, near his ruler and his slave. It seemed to him, so deeply merged were their souls, that if they had tried to separate them, they would not have been able to tell which part belonged to which. Yeah, so I'm really not liking Marius right now. Like, that whole part there, I'm just, like, I was leaning closer and closer to the camera as I was reading, because I'm just, like, more like, what the fuck is this kind of thing. I would never want to be with someone that feels like they possess me. Like, we are not items. Like, we're not things to be bought. And so that whole just paragraph there is so disturbing, but I also think really shows how women were viewed. And I know people still view women like that today, but especially for that time period, that was pretty much everyone. Book Marius, I think I can definitely say I don't like at all. And even movie Marius and musical, God, why can't I not remember the word musical? And musical Marius, even them, I've always just been kind of like, toward, but this, like, really paints a whole different picture, and it's not one I enjoy. But the rest of this chapter goes on an interesting turn, because Cosette reveals that her and Jean Valjean have to go to England, because he told her that he has some business there or something that they have to take care of. She doesn't know when they're going to leave. She doesn't know how long they're going to be gone. And so she's bawling, and Marius is instantly, like, ready to abandon her, and it's fucking weird. Like, he's just immediately acts really cold toward her and is like, well, then I'm going to have to go. And she's like, what the fuck? But then she's like, why can't you come with me? And he's like, bitch, I'm fucking poor. I have no money. I see you in the dark so that you can't see how shitty my clothes are, kind of thing. Then he kind of changes his tune and is like, wait a second, I won't be here tomorrow, but the night after I will be back because I have a plan. And so I think it's very obvious that he is going to go to his grandfather and ask for money, especially since the next chapter is called Old Heart versus Young Heart. So I think he's going to go there and plead his case, and I'm not sure if he's going to tell him about Cosette or not, but before, his grandpa had supposed to have been sending him money every month, but he turned that away. But I think that his aunt never told the grandpa about that, so he might be like, well, what the fuck have you been doing with what I've been giving you? So I'm not sure if that's going to kind of be revealed, but I definitely think he's going to go ask for help, and this might be why in the movie Marius comes off as always being rich, never being poor. So I'm wondering if he's going to kind of like reclaim his place in his grandfather's life and accept that help and that family money kind of thing. Right now, he has absolutely nothing. He owes his friend money. He's like at the lowest of the low because he's just been so blinded by this ridiculous love that he doesn't give a fuck about anything else. So just another reason to dislike Marius, essentially. So that's where I'm at the moment. I'll be reading more tomorrow. And I'm in here once again because of the AC, but the rest of the week, the temperature is supposed to be in the low to mid 70s. So I am truly hoping that since it is now September, that today is the last day we need the AC. Like, I really have fingers crossed about that because I just want some cooler weather so badly. That was quite a chapter. I actually thought Marius's grandfather had like died at the end there for a second, but no, he's just completely heartbroken. So pretty much this chapter, it's talking about how his grandfather has been since he left. He's now 91. Like, damn. He old. Basically, his grandfather really misses Marius. He doesn't like his great nephew, Theodule, that's the like cavalry guy. And he's basically just in like this misery over not being able to see Marius. He's afraid he's gonna die without ever seeing him again. But he won't admit that he was wrong. And so he has like no desire to try to seek him out for like a reconciliation thing. And so he's basically sitting there in his chair, coming to terms with the fact he's probably never going to see Marius again when Marius shows up. And I thought Marius was going to ask him for money, actually, but no, he asks him to approve of him marrying Cosette, and his grandfather instantly says no. Like, I don't understand why this guy is doing this, because it's literally saying, like, his grandfather wants nothing more than for him to, like, run into his arms. He just wants to give him a hug kind of thing. But he's just a complete fucking asshole to Marius. He says no, is just bitching at him about how, like, threadbare his clothes are and stuff, and he's like, oh, the money I'm giving you every month isn't enough. But for some reason, Marius doesn't even tell him he hasn't been taking his money. His grandfather keeps interrupting him and is like, oh, I bet you've been off running around with the revolutionaries and doing this and doing that and being like a scoundrel and everything. And it's just like pretty much everything Marius hasn't been doing. So it's really frustrating to see this conversation happen. And Marius is just sitting there like, what the fuck is going on? And when he goes to leave, since his grandpa is just going on a tirade, his grandfather throws him in a chair and is like, tell me about her kind of thing. And so he kind of does a quick like paragraph recap of how he met Cosette and everything. And the grandfather's like, no, of course not. Do not marry. You're too young to marry. Of course you're in love. You're 21. Like, that's what you do. But you take her as a mistress instead. You don't marry her. And Marius just gets up and fucking leaves. Like, he says one thing as he does, and I'll read that real quick. This is on page 874. It says, he rose, picked up his hat off the floor, and walked firmly and resolutely toward the door. Here he turned, bowed deeply to his grandfather, straightened himself and said, 5 years ago you insulted my father. Today you have insulted my future wife. I shall ask nothing more of you, monsieur. Farewell. So he leaves, and the grandpa is instantly freaking out and wants to stop him. And so as quick as he can, he gets up, goes out, and is like, help, help. And so like the butler and his daughter come running, and he's out leaning out the window like fucking screaming for Marius to come back, but Marius is already far enough away where he can't hear. And so it ends with them like pulling him back through the window and setting him in chair, and he's just completely heartbroken. It's like, maybe don't be a fucking asshole. Like, I will never understand why people just can't be nice. Like, they just have such a grudge and hold their anger so much that they purposely push away the things they love the most, and it is just bizarre. So that's how that chapter ended, with the grandfather not giving his blessing, doing the exact opposite. So I wonder if that's the last we're gonna see of the grandpa, actually. But that was also the last chapter of that book. So it's now book 9, I think? Yeah. And it's called Where Are They Going? So I think this is going to talk about how Jean Valjean and Cosette are going to England, because the chapter titles are actually their names. Like the first one is Jean Valjean, the second one is Marius. Oh, the third one is Monsieur Mabeuf. So like, oh, maybe instead of it just being them going to England, maybe it's like an update on where all the main characters are at this point in time. Oh. Okay, maybe not. There's only 3 chapters in this, so that's shorter than I thought. Okay, I don't know. I'm gonna have to read this to figure it out. So that's all for Les Miserables for today. Tonight we're actually going to a Japanese restaurant called Sukiyaki. We've been there once before. We went there for Fête de la Musique. It's where we ate before checking out some of those things. It's over in the Bastille area. And it's a Japanese barbecue, so I'm gonna barbecue some meats. And I'm really looking forward to that. But that's essentially it for now. And I'm just finishing up making cookies. The last few are in the oven. We have a really oh yeah, you can't see because I have it on me right now. We have a really crappy tiny electric oven, and it does not cook well at all. So I can't have like gooey center because it will literally just be uncooked center. So they are darker than I wanted them to be, but that is our tiny oven. As you can see, it is barely bigger than the microwave. And boom. Cookies. See, like this one's from the first batch, and you can see how the center is not cooked right, so it just completely sunk. And so they're a bit darker than I would like them to be, but they taste very good.
Let's try this.
So there's grass blowing around.
Yeah, because of static electricity. I don't know if you can see it like this better.
Oh god, it looks weird.
You can see it stuck on all the parts.
See, it's stuck in the corner. Sounds like you're cooking it. Grass. What the fuck is happening? So, the queen is dead. That's the thing. Like, it was really weird yesterday because there were articles coming out saying like, oh, she's in really bad health, and she was at Balmoral, or however you say it, castle, and family was going to her, and so everyone's just like, oh shit, this is probably it. This is the historical moment where she dies, kind of thing. People are saying that at 6 p.m. UK time, which was 7 p.m. for me, is probably when they were going to do the announcement, because that's when like the BBC was going to come back on air. And it actually ended up being 6:30/7:30, because apparently like Harry wasn't there yet. And I know absolutely nothing of the royal family. Like, who the hell is William? Who the hell is Harry? I have no freaking idea. I can't tell you. I'm also like American and I live in France, so I have like no connection to England or the royal family or anything like that. I have no interest either. Hearing the news was still weird. Like, since people were thinking there was going to be an announcement, I was actually looking for a news stream, and the second I put one up is when they announced it. It was like, oh shit. And I just felt strange, because she's been one of those constants in history. Like, when you learn history in school, like when you talk about the UK, like you're always going to talk about the Queen. And so she's just someone who has just always been like a figurehead there. And now she's gone, and it's just like, if that's all you've known your entire life, it still feels weird even if you don't live there. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say on it, because the monarchy has not done good things. So there's definitely mixed reactions going on over the news, but the monarchy is still there. We now have King Charles III, apparently. Yeah, the UK is going to be really strange for the next 10 days. They literally have, like, this set of rules they have to follow. And, like, there's weird things like comedy specials and stuff can't be on TV because they're in, like, a time of mourning now. So, yeah. It's gonna be weird. It must be weird for those living there. But anyway, all of that went down right as I was going to read and film, and instead I just got sucked into watching the news for an hour. So I was not able to film yesterday and do what I wanted. So instead, after all of that, I ended up reading that whole book. It was just the 3 chapters, and like some of them were only a page and a half, so it was not long at all. So it was book 9, and so I'm now at book 10. But this was the book where it's called Where Are They Going? And like it's Jean Valjean, Marius, and then Monsieur Mabeuf. I almost said Mabeuf. So for Jean Valjean, he actually saw where Marius had written his address in the garden, and so he thinks someone has been like breaking in and maybe been doing some unsavory things. He has no idea it's Marius. He has no idea Cosette has a connection to it, and he keeps quiet about it as to not like alarm her. This is one of the reasons why he actually wants to go to England, and he notices like Thénardier is out of jail. He knows Javert is still around, and so like all this combined, he's like, yeah, let's get out of town kind of thing. There's a moment where he's on one of his walks and he's thinking about this upcoming trip, how he told Cosette he wants to leave within a week kind of thing, and he notices someone's like on a ridge behind him, and as he goes to look, a note falls in his lap that just says clear out, and when he looks up, that person is gone, and they make it really obvious that it's Eponine. And so Valjean goes home immediately, and I think like they pack up and leave immediately as well, because it then goes into the chapter of Marius, and he goes to meet up with her because it's been the 48 hours. He went to talk to his grandpa, and that did not go well. He gets to Cosette's house, and it's all closed up. No one's there. He's pounding on the door, calling her name. No one's answering, and he's just like, what the fuck? While he's like searching around in the garden for some clue or whatever, someone shouts at him that his friends are waiting for him at the barricade. And I'm just like, what the fuck? Because like earlier in that same day, his friends had told them like, aren't you going to the funeral of General Lamarck? And like that was my first like, what the fuck? Because there's been absolutely nothing leading up to this. There has been zero talk of this. And now it's like General Lamarck is dead, which in the movie, that's what Gavroche rushes in and says right after the red and black's on, and that's when everything just kind of gets ramped up to 11. That happens, the barricade is happening in the same day, and it feels so bizarre because we've just been stuck on Marius and Cosette for so fucking long. It's just like, where is this coming from? But the person that shouted to Marius was also Eponine, and so it seems like he is on his way to the barricade, because now he has nothing to live for or whatever, so he's probably going to do something fucking stupid. And then the 3rd chapter is Monsieur Mabeuf, which the money that Jean Valjean secretly gave him, he turns into the police as like someone lost it kind of thing, and it's like, why would you fucking do this? So he still has no money, and he ends up selling, like he was the book collector. He really liked botany and collecting rare books. He has to sell his whole collection, and he does it one by one. And his housemaid / friend, she ends up getting really sick, and he only had one book left, which was his most prized possession, and they couldn't afford the medicine for her, and so he goes and gets 100 francs, which all the other books were only like 20 to 35 francs, and gives her the money for the medicine. And it's just like, it's so freaking sad. Like, he has just given up on everything, and it talks about how depressed he is and stuff. But basically, like, he's outside, and he hears this commotion, and he asks someone what's happening, and he's like, oh, there's a riot. And I think it's referring to the barricade. So he asks where it's happening and stuff, and he goes in his freaking house and, like, grabs his hat and coat and just goes to the barricade. So I'm like, holy shit, is this old guy gonna fucking die at this fucking barricade? Like, what? And so book 10 is called The 5th of June, 1832. As you'll know, if you know anything about Les Miserables, is the June Rebellion. And this is day 1 of the barricade. It only lasts a day, like it's June 5th to 6th kind of thing. and it was a very, very minor rebellion in French history. But I'm just like, are we just jumping into this now? Like, what is going on? This just feels so sudden. And like, I had been wondering, because I'm like, there's only a few hundred pages left. Like, when are we gonna start talking about revolution and stuff? Well, I guess we skipped the talk and went straight to the action kind of thing. Or at least that's what it seems. It's Les Miserables. I'm not getting my hopes up that we're not going to go talk about something completely unrelated. So that's where I'll be starting next. And I think this is where it's interesting to see how much the musical and the movies and stuff diverge from the source material. Because I can see why they decided, hey, we're going to focus on the revolution part a lot more than the stupid Marius and Cosette part, because it's just kind of droning. It goes on, and like, I feel like not a lot has been happening in here lately, and Jean Valjean's just kind of been there, like just existing, not really doing much. So hopefully this means we're in the start of more action.
It's probably going to take a while to do it in the end, because the wood glue takes a while to
Dry.
Can you help me hold it?
We're finally having a cooler day. As you can see, I am a bit cold right now, but it's only 64 degrees outside, and so I think that's the coldest it's been the whole summer. Monday's supposed to be back to 85, so I don't know what the fuck is happening with that. But tonight we're actually going to this light festival that's on the Isle of Impressionists, which sounds quite intriguing, as Impressionism is one of my favorite art styles. But it's not in Paris, it's actually like half an hour on the RER west of us. We are going to be heading out there this evening. There's like a night market, there's a museum that's open late, there's a boat parade, there's some other like light show type things happening. So we'll just kind of see what we end up doing when we get there, kind of thing. But I have read my chapter in Les Mis. There really isn't much going on. It's just a lot of like analogies and then talking about how much previous revolutions have cost France. And it's just kind of like, what? And so at the end of that chapter, it's talking about how like, oh, can I find it? It's talking about how like the details above that it had just like talked about with the money and everything. Actually, instead of me trying to describe it, I'm just going to read the last 3 sentences here. This is on page 886. It says, "Moreover, we do not accept those figures, which sound like argument but are simply words. Accepting the fact of a revolt, we seek to examine the thing itself. The doctrinaire attitude depicted above deals only with effects. We must look for the cause." And so the next chapter is called The Root of the Question. And so I guess it's just analyzing why like revolts and revolutions happen. But pretty much some of the other things it mentioned in this chapter was about how revolutions that don't succeed actually just bring more power to the people in charge, and how there's kind of like a resurgence of power because it basically tests that power and puts it on display. And so afterward, there's usually more faith in that power. And so it's talking about how revolutions could actually be the answer to like the problem of there being a revolution. Like it's actually kind of interesting, but it was just really quickly glossed over in this chapter, and all of the analogies and stuff were just very weird. But I'm wondering how long we're going to be in kind of like this analysis mode, because it's definitely not as interesting as the actual like barricade action. Like I want to know, is that where Marius is actually going to go, and is he going to do something reckless because he thinks Cosette is gone, kind of thing. Like those are the things I'm more interested in learning about. But that'll be the last chapter for this week. I will probably pop in tomorrow to close it out, because the next thing is probably just going to be from the Light Festival. But that is all for today and this week for now. We are supposed to be leaving in less than half an hour, and it is raining and is not stopping.
dire allure mon restaurant, avec ce nouveau balcon et son fronton. J'ai tout démoli et reconstruit en 1867. Ça m'a presque coûté aussi cher.
Pas de fortune. Et quoique, fort sympathique et de bonne compagnie pour le plaisir de la conversation.
So, last night was not exactly what we expected. The advertisement for it made it seem like it was going to be a lot bigger than what it was. There were only a few vendors for this night market. There was only 2 food trucks, one selling hot dogs, one selling poke bowls, so that was just not it. And then the museum itself was incredibly tiny and had the weirdest animations, which you would have seen in that clip there. But I mean, we did get out of the house and it was a nice area, so I guess that was good. But then today we had the Korean Street Food Festival, and we just got back from that a few minutes ago actually, and we ended up having the same food that we had when we had gone to the Korean Food Festival back in July. But that one had a lot more food vendors and everything. So, but the lines were so freaking long. Like, oh my god, there were so many people in line. It was insane. And some of the lines just were not moving at all. So we just got delicious chicken. So that's it for this week. Thank you for hanging out with me. It is always appreciated. And until next time, bonne journée and au revoir.